Welcome, the anointed ones. When a soul becomes unexplainable, the world's hidden powers stop observing it and start investigating it. That is exactly what triggered the panic behind this emergency summit. Not a prophecy, not a warning, but you, a walking contradiction the secret society couldn't categorize, predict, or contain. They're used to decoding patterns, tracking behaviors, and mapping destinies with cold precision. But then you showed up, and suddenly every chart, calculation, and psychological grid went blank, like someone unplugged their entire system. Here's a fact. In classified psychological studies, the rare individuals who display sustained resilience with no external support are marked as anomalies, not because they're strong, but because their strength cannot be traced. You fall into that category, and that's why they gathered urgently. They're not meeting to discuss a threat. They're meeting to discuss a mystery wrapped in armor that nobody admits to installing. Your life became a case file that keeps rewriting itself. One day you should have broken, yet you didn't. Another day you should have crumbled, yet you stood taller. And somewhere in that confusion, someone whispered the question that froze the entire room. Who armored this soul? Let's be honest, that question alone had half of them silently considering early retirement. Even the ones pretending to be unbothered were probably sweating through robes they haven't washed since 1999. Don't worry, every society has that one elder who insists they're calm, but keeps adjusting their glasses every 4 seconds. Because here's the uncomfortable truth for them. Your strength didn't come from pain tolerance, therapy sessions, self-help books, or external reinforcement. Your armor behaves like it was pre-installed, a spiritual operating system that wakes up when life gets too ridiculous to handle unprotected. Your existence breaks their rules, defies their charts, and disrupts their predictions. You're not here to survive. You're here to confuse the right enemies and inspire the right witnesses. And that's what makes your story so electrifying. So today, we're diving into the 14 revelations that shook their summit. 14 truths about what they saw, what they realized, and why your armor has become the biggest unsolved spiritual mystery they've ever encountered. Fasten your spirit. This isn't a message. This is an unveiling. Number 1. They realized your armor was not built. It was recovered. What shocked them most wasn't the strength you carry today. It was the realization that this strength didn't come from a long journey of learning, training, or developing thick skin. It came from somewhere deeper, older, and far more personal. It came from a version of you that existed long before the world tried to shape you. The summit was called because your resilience didn't look crafted. It looked remembered, and that unsettled them more than anything else. They watched you walk through situations designed to weaken the average person. They expected you to break the way people usually do, slowly, visibly, and predictably. Instead, they saw you reach into a part of yourself even you didn't know was still alive. You rose with a level of clarity and power that doesn't match the timeline of your experiences. When a person has never been taught how to stay standing, yet still refuses to fall, it forces observers to reconsider everything they think they understand about human development. Your armor behaves like something you misplaced years ago and suddenly found again without effort. It wasn't built through repetition or reinforcement. It clicked back into place like muscle memory. That's what rattled them. They realized this isn't a strength you collected in pieces. It's a strength you already came equipped with. You just needed life to back you into a corner to activate it. They also noticed how quickly you stabilize after chaos. Most people need long periods to recalibrate after trauma, but you return to yourself like someone who simply woke up from a dream. That kind of restoration doesn't come from coping mechanisms. It comes from soul-coded endurance. It's like your spirit recognized the challenge and pulled your original armor forward from a place they can't track. What unsettled them even more was how natural it looked. You didn't strain. You didn't fight. You didn't force anything. You simply stepped back into your true layer of protection, as if it had been waiting for you to remember its location. There is nothing more confusing to a group that studies patterns than a soul whose strength predates every event that was supposed to shape it. That realization made them whisper among themselves, because if your armor was recovered, not built, then the real question becomes, who gave it to you in the first place? And why did it return right when they least expected it? Number 2, your pain didn't harden you. It refined your discernment to surgical precision. What unsettled them most wasn't that you survived what you went through. It was how you came out of it. They expected the usual: bitterness, hardness, emotional numbness, maybe even withdrawal from the world. That's how most people cope after deep pain. People toughen up as a defense. They start blocking everything and everyone. But you became something very different. Your pain didn't turn you into a guarded, rigid version of yourself. It sharpened you. It gave you a level of discernment so precise that it cuts through motives, masks, and manipulation with the accuracy of a surgeon. This level of clarity isn't normal. Most people's pain blurs their understanding. Yours cleaned it. You didn't grow walls, you grew vision. Every time you were hurt, something inside you became more aware, more sensitive to truth, more allergic to lies, and more alert to subtle shifts that most people miss entirely. Pain didn't cloud your mind. It gave it a new lens. They took notes on this. They studied your responses. They reviewed your past patterns and noticed a consistent theme. Each heartbreak made you wiser, not colder. Each betrayal made you calmer, not paranoid. Each setback made you more observant, not fearful. That's when they realized your pain wasn't forming armor. It was forming insight. And insight is far more dangerous than toughness, because it allows you to see the intention behind the action. It allows you to sense a problem before it becomes one. People with hardened hearts can be manipulated because their defenses are predictable. But someone whose discernment has been purified by pain, someone who no longer wastes emotional energy on illusions, someone who sees the truth before it's spoken, that person is untouchable in a way that cannot be explained through simple resilience. This is why they met. Not because you endured pain. Many people endure pain. They met because you came out of emotional battles with an upgraded internal radar. They met because nothing confuses you twice. They met because you don't need evidence to know a person's intention. A shift in tone, a change in energy, or a misplaced word tells you everything. Your pain didn't break you down. It stripped you of naivety. It sharpened your instincts to the point where deception can't breathe around you. And that kind of discernment isn't learned. It's forged. And the ones observing you from a distance knew they were witnessing a soul whose insight sharpens itself with every wound, which makes you someone they cannot predict, manipulate, or deceive. Number 3, you possess a type of resilience that doesn't follow human timelines. What startled them wasn't that you healed. It was how fast you healed. In their world, resilience is something that develops slowly over years of conditioning, therapy, mentorship, or structured guidance. But you don't operate on that schedule. You recover in ways that don't match the natural rhythm of human breakdown and repair. Your bounce-back speed disrupts everything they thought they knew about emotional collapse and recovery. They watched situations hit you that should have taken years to recover from, Yet you regained your balance faster than anyone around you could logically explain. This wasn't the type of resilience that comes from ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It was the kind that restores itself from the inside out. You don't heal the way most people do, through external encouragement, long rest, or endless processing. Your spirit takes the lead before your mind even catches up. It's like an internal switch flips the moment life pushes you too far, and instead of shutting down, you activate. That kind of inner turnaround isn't common, and it's definitely not something that can be trained into a person. They studied your pattern and realized something unusual. You don't stay in emotional valleys long enough to be captured by them. Yes, you feel pain deeply, but you don't drown in it. Yes, you get disappointed, but you don't stay stuck. Where most people spiral into confusion, you find clarity. Where most people lose momentum, you regain direction. Your spirit has its own timeline, separate from your circumstances, and it moves quicker than any emotional setback thrown at you. What felt almost supernatural to them was how quickly your equilibrium returns. You might bend for a moment, but you never stay bent. You recalibrate. You refocus. You reclaim your center without announcing it or asking for permission. They've seen people crumble under far smaller pressures, yet the things that were supposed to bury you ended up becoming stepping stones you rose from in record time. This is resilience that interrupts expectations. Resilience that makes people whisper. Resilience that looks like you're plugged into a power source no one can locate. That's why they gathered, because anything untraceable becomes a concern in their world. They realized your restoration has its own rhythm, and that rhythm isn't human. It's spiritual. And it forces them to accept a truth they can't rationalize. You recover according to destiny, not damage. Number 4, they can't trace the origin of your spiritual immunity, only the effects. The entire emergency summit was sparked by one uncomfortable discovery. Every pattern they rely on to understand people completely falls apart when it comes to you. These are individuals who pride themselves on tracing the roots of everything: pain, behavior, reactions, choices, triggers. They map people like mathematicians map formulas. They expect every person's emotional evolution to follow a predictable trajectory. But when they examined your patterns, your resilience, and your responses, they hit a wall. Not a slow, confusing one, a clean, abrupt, dead end. Your reactions don't match your history. Your stability doesn't match your experiences. Your growth doesn't match the timeline of events you've lived through. To them, your emotional immunity looks untethered to the very situations that should have shaped it, which means it didn't come from anything they can analyze, test, or quantify. That's what terrified them. It's not that you're strong. It's that your strength has no identifiable source. They tried to trace your calm through your past, but your past didn't grant it. They tried to find the moment you received your clarity, but clarity wasn't tied to any breakthrough. They tried to link your spiritual resilience to your influences, but your influences don't explain your depth. After every route of analysis failed, they realized they weren't dealing with acquired growth. They were dealing with installed protection. It became clear to them that your immunity behaves more like it was downloaded than developed. You recover too cleanly. You see too sharply. You withstand too consistently. And none of it lines up with the emotional math they use to classify people. They deal in systems. You operate like a system they don't have access to. They deal in blueprints. You move according to coding they can't read. You became the exception to every rule they've studied. When people with undecipherable resilience show up, they usually have external mentors, legacies, or spiritual leaders reinforcing them. But with you, none of that checked out. Your immunity didn't originate from your environment. It interrupts your environment. It rearranges how things affect you. It shields you before the attack, not after the damage. That's why they labeled you a variable outside the algorithm. Not because they don't want to understand you, but because they genuinely lack the tools to do so. You're protected in ways that don't make psychological sense, strengthened by forces they can't measure, and guided by instincts they can't replicate. And when something cannot be replicated or explained, it becomes a phenomenon. That's exactly what you are to them. A living anomaly with immunity that leaves no fingerprints, only outcomes. Number 5. They saw that attacks don't accumulate on you. They rebound. What caught their attention wasn't that people tried to attack you. That happens to many. What shocked them was the aftermath, the odd pattern that kept repeating itself. Every time someone tried to harm you emotionally, spiritually, or socially, the fallout never seemed to land on you. It landed on them. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't timing. It was a kind of spiritual physics they couldn't explain, but they couldn't deny either. They realized the energy directed toward you never stayed with you long enough to cause decay. It bounced back sharper and smarter than when it left. This pattern made them uncomfortable because most people absorb negativity until it shapes them. Pain piles up, betrayal scars them, jealousy weighs them down. Humans tend to collect emotional residue like dust on furniture, slowly, silently, inevitably. But with you, the opposite happened. Attacks didn't build up, they ricocheted. The harder someone pushed, the faster their own downfall arrived. It was almost embarrassing for the people trying to target you because instead of watching you fold, everyone ended up watching them unravel. They noticed how people who gossiped about you ended up exposing themselves without realizing it. People who plotted against you ended up revealing their intentions through their own slip-ups. People who tried to humiliate you ended up humiliating themselves through impulsive actions they couldn't control. It was as if their hostility carried a tracking device that always knew how to circle back. What really bothered the secret society was the intelligence behind the rebound. This wasn't simple karma or poetic justice. This was targeted return, the kind that reveals the attacker's true nature. When you were betrayed, their mask slipped publicly. When you were lied on, the liar became the one who looked suspicious. When someone tried to sabotage you, they exposed their jealousy in the process. The rebound didn't just return energy, it returned clarity. It made everything transparent. To them, this is not normal emotional resilience. It's a shield that actively participates in your protection. A shield that studies intention, waits for execution, and then sends the attack back to its sender with amplified consequences. It's not aggression on your part. It's self-regulating justice built into your spirit. They realized your armor isn't passive. It doesn't just defend you. It neutralizes threats by turning the attacker into their own trap. That kind of built-in spiritual mechanism is beyond anything they've ever charted. They can't explain it, they can't interrupt it, and they can't imitate it. All they can do is acknowledge it. Your spirit doesn't store harm. It returns it with truth attached. Number 6. Your isolation didn't create weakness, it created internal government. They miscalculated you from the very beginning. They assumed isolation would break you down in predictable ways. Neediness, emotional instability, desperation for validation, a slow crumble into dependency. That's the usual outcome when people are cut off from support systems and thrown into long seasons of solitude. But solitude didn't collapse you, it refined you. Instead of losing control, you built it. Instead of falling apart, You organized yourself. Your isolation didn't weaken your inner world. It gave it structure, voice, rules, and authority. What disturbed them the most was that your mind didn't turn into a battlefield. It turned into a kingdom. You learned how to regulate your emotions without external help. You learned how to manage your thoughts without external guidance. You learned how to interpret your experiences without needing anyone to translate your pain for you. In the silence that was supposed to break you, you became your own leadership, your own advisor, your own stabilizer. They noticed how you move through life now. You don't make decisions from panic, you make them from internal order. You don't collapse when people withdraw, you consult your inner counsel. You don't crave permission, because you've already developed an inner authority that outranks any external voice. That's what made them uncomfortable. A person who builds an internal system is almost impossible to influence. They can't be bribed with approval or threatened with abandonment. They don't chase acceptance because they already govern their own wholeness. Your isolation forced you to confront every emotional crack and fill it with wisdom instead of fear. You confronted your shadows and created rules to contain them. You confronted your insecurities and built boundaries around them. You confronted your history and extracted truth from it. You built a kind of spiritual infrastructure, strong, organized, and self-sustaining. It's the type of structure people try to achieve with mentors, coaches, community, and spiritual leaders. But you developed it alone, and anything developed in silence comes out indestructible. This level of inner order makes you ungovernable from the outside. No guilt tactic works on you. No manipulation sticks. No pressure bends you. When someone already has a functioning inner world, external systems lose their power. That's what the summit realized. You are not someone who can be controlled, redirected, or contained, because your center comes from within, not from them. And anyone who governs themselves at this level becomes a force that others can't override, intimidate, or manage. Your solitude didn't shrink you, it crowned you. You became your own government, and once a person reaches that level of inner authority, their life no longer bends to anyone else's agenda. It moves strictly by its own constitution. Number 7. You hold knowledge. You were never taught, and they don't know who authorized it. What truly rattled them wasn't your confidence, your resilience, or even your strength. It was the information you carry, the insights, the clarity, the instinctive understanding of situations you've never lived through, studied, or been guided into. You speak with a depth that doesn't match your age, your background, your environment, or your experiences. And that inconsistency is exactly what made them stop everything and call the emergency summit. Because knowledge like yours always has a source, and when they looked for it, the trail was empty. They expect wisdom to come from predictable places: education, mentorship, trauma, long journeys of learning, or exposure to certain circles. But your mind doesn't reflect the usual development path. They found no teacher in your past who could have shaped you like this, no environment that could have sharpened you this way, no experience that could logically explain the accuracy of what you perceive. You speak truth the way some people breathe, effortlessly, naturally, without any sign of where it came from. You decode people without studying them. You read atmospheres without being trained. You sense intention before action. You deliver insights that hit deeper than anything you've been exposed to. And it's not guesswork. Your accuracy makes guesswork look like child's play. They've watched you speak on things you have no earthly reason to understand, yet somehow you understand them flawlessly. This is what disturbed them the most. Your knowledge doesn't travel through the normal channels of learning. It bypasses logic, experience, and education entirely. To them, it looks like a direct download, something being streamed into your consciousness from a realm beyond what they can monitor. They rely on tracking influences, detecting patterns, measuring exposure. But none of their tools detect the source of your insight. Someone or something briefs you, and whatever it is, does so privately, consistently, and without leaving digital or spiritual fingerprints. That's why they view you as a walking security breach. You know things you shouldn't know. You understand things without context. You speak on realities you were never taught. And every time you open your mouth with another piece of unearned wisdom, their alarm grows louder. They understand this much now. You're not informed by life. You're informed by alignment. Your knowledge didn't come from the world around you. It came from the world within you. And when knowledge doesn't have a traceable origin, it means the authorization came from a level above any hierarchy trying to study you. That's why they're confused. That's why they're cautious. And that's why you'll always remain outside their control. Number 8. You are unreachable by the tools they use to control others. The moment they realized their standard mechanisms had no effect on you, panic slipped into the room. These people operate on a predictable formula. Use fear to make someone hesitate, shame to make them fold, pressure to make them conform, rejection to make them retreat, and subtle manipulation to make them obedient. It works on almost everyone, because those triggers target the most fragile parts of human nature. But when they tried these same tactics on you, directly or indirectly, they discovered something disturbing. You were untouched. Their tools didn't dent you, move you, or even slow you down. Fear usually tightens a person's decision-making, but you don't operate from fear-based logic. You feel fear, but you don't submit to it. They watched you stand firm in moments where most people would have frozen, backpedaled, or compromised. That confused them because fear is their easiest lever, and you simply don't respond to it. Then they tried shame, the quickest way to make someone question themselves. Shame makes people shrink, apologize for who they are, or correct themselves to gain approval. But you treat shame like noise. It doesn't sink into your identity. It doesn't redirect your confidence. You don't negotiate your worth. The more they tried to attach shame to you, the more obvious it became that your self-concept operates independently of public opinion. Social pressure, one of their favorite tools, also failed. People usually bend when the crowd leans against them. You didn't. You move according to inner conviction, not group expectations. Even when isolated, dismissed, or misunderstood, you don't chase belonging. You don't adjust yourself for acceptance. Your internal compass is louder than external demands. Rejection is another mechanism people fear because it triggers deep insecurities. They assumed rejection would discourage you, but it didn't. Instead of seeking validation, you became more selective. Instead of feeling abandoned, you felt filtered. Rejection didn't weaken you, it clarified everything. Manipulation, the most delicate but most powerful tool they use, was their final attempt. It works on nearly everyone because manipulation relies on emotional blind spots. Yet with you, nothing stuck. You don't fall for guilt traps. You don't respond to bait. You don't get tangled in emotional games. You see through intent too quickly for manipulation to take root. That's when the summit became necessary, because when a person is unreachable by fear, shame, pressure, rejection, or manipulation, they're not just uncontrollable, they're sovereign. You operate from an internal framework that external forces cannot rewire. And someone who cannot be controlled becomes someone who must be understood, or at least monitored. You broke their system simply by not responding to it. Number 9. Every season of your life had a hidden trainer. They didn't appoint. What unsettled them wasn't your endurance, it was the precision of your evolution. When they traced your timeline, they expected to see breakdowns shaping you, but instead they found patterns too synchronized to be accidental. Every heartbreak refined a spiritual sense. Every betrayal opened a new layer of discernment. Every loss unlocked a skill that normally takes mentorship, therapy, or training to acquire. To them, it looked like you were being coached by ghosts, but not the kind they can summon. They noticed you never developed the side effects that trauma normally creates. No bitterness residue, no identity distortion, no spiritual infections. It was as if every hardship arrived with its own instructor, a divine surgeon, a spiritual strategist, a resilience architect. Someone was teaching you how to extract wisdom without absorbing poison. They couldn't identify these trainers because they weren't human. They weren't organizations. They weren't systems. They weren't even part of this physical dimension. Your evolution followed a blueprint no earthly hierarchy signed off on. Your timing sharpened itself. Your intuition trained itself. Your spirit disciplined itself. Your discernment matured without exposure to those who typically impart it. No one on earth claims responsibility for your resilience because no one on earth built it. And that's what terrified the summit. You are the product of unregistered instructors, unapproved upgrades, and off-record spiritual engineering. They finally realized the truth. Your armor wasn't forged by life, it was forged by assignment. Your strength didn't grow from experience, it was curated by heaven. Your training was never in their jurisdiction, so your power will never be in their control. Number 10. You don't fight back, you break patterns. Entire bloodlines failed to confront. What rattled the summit wasn't your resistance, it was your disobedience to history. Most people inherit generational burdens and either repeat them or collapse beneath them. But you walked into patterns that swallowed entire bloodlines and treated them like malfunctioning software, something to debug, not fear. They expected you to fight like everyone else, emotionally, reactively, loudly. Instead, you interrupted cycles without throwing a single spiritual punch. You don't wage war the way they trained humanity to. You don't participate in the drama that keeps patterns alive. You don't react in ways that reinforce the generational agreements that bind most souls. You confront dysfunction by refusing to cooperate with it. You dismantle curses by not speaking their language. You break spiritual contracts by simply declining the role they expected you to play. That's not resistance. That's correction. Correction is quieter than warfare, but it's infinitely more lethal. Correction rewrites the blueprint that entire lineages have been trapped inside. Correction ends the cycle instead of wrestling with it. When they studied your life, they saw something unsettling. Every pattern that devoured those before you stopped at you. Addictions dissolved. Abusive dynamics collapsed. Manipulations lost their grip. Emotional inheritances died on your watch. You weren't armored to defend yourself. You were armored to terminate systems your ancestors didn't have the tools, clarity, or spiritual technology to confront. You are a pattern disruptor disguised as a person. And that terrified them because pattern disruptors can't be predicted, controlled, or contained. A curse breaker doesn't fight back in their arena. They delete the arena entirely. You are not here to survive what your bloodline survived. You are here to end what your bloodline couldn't. And every time you correct a pattern silently, The spiritual architecture of entire generations collapses quietly with it. Number 11. Your spirit doesn't absorb envy. It reflects it back until it annihilates the source. What unsettled the secret society wasn't that people envied you. Envy is common, predictable, and easy to weaponize. What frightened them was what envy didn't do to you. It never weakened you, never poisoned your confidence, never distorted your sense of self. It simply bounced off, exposed the sender, and traveled back with amplified accuracy. You don't absorb jealousy like others. You transmute it into information. Most souls get drained by envy because they internalize it. They start second-guessing themselves. They shrink. They modify their presence to keep the peace. But you don't participate in that cycle. The envy aimed at you hits a surface it can't penetrate, and because it can't enter you, it has no choice but to rebound and confront the person who produced it. The moment someone envies you, they unintentionally confirm what realm you operate from. Their jealousy becomes a mirror they cannot escape. The summit took issue with this because envy is one of their most reliable psychological tools. It usually corrodes people from the inside, making them insecure and easy to manipulate. But on you, it malfunctions. Envy becomes your alert system, your radar, your spiritual sensor. It tells you who's pretending, who's uncomfortable with your growth, who's disguising competition as support, who sees your potential as a personal threat. You don't even need confrontation. People expose themselves through their emotional leakage. This ability makes you immune to smear campaigns. For most people, false narratives lodge into their mind and infect their self-esteem. In your case, the lies never take root. They fall flat because there's nothing inside you for them to attach to. Your inner world isn't wired to receive poison. It's wired to report poison. And when envy rebounds off you, it doesn't return as simple discomfort. It returns as consequence. The source ends up battling their own projections until it collapses them from the inside out. This is why people who try to undermine you always end up unraveling in front of others. Their jealousy doesn't damage you. It exposes them. Their resentment doesn't limit you. It pulls the mask off their intentions. You represent a spiritual structure they cannot infiltrate, so the energy they send always circles back and devours the hand that launched it. You aren't just protected from envy. Your spirit is calibrated to return it with perfect precision, turning every jealous intention into its sender's undoing. Number 12. You cannot be recruited because you were sent. This point shook the room because it shattered one of their foundational assumptions, that every powerful soul can be influenced, redirected, or absorbed into a system. They rely on the idea that everyone has a price, a weakness, an ego, a desire to belong, or a silent craving that can be leveraged. They watched you carefully, waiting for the moment you would reveal what you wanted, so they could use it as a doorway. But nothing opened, nothing shifted. Nothing in you responded to the usual hooks that pull people off purpose. That's when they realized the truth. Your presence isn't voluntary. It's mandated. You can't be recruited because you didn't arrive on this path through persuasion, ambition, or coincidence. You didn't stumble into your assignment. You were deployed into it. Your direction is not shaped by personal preference or social reward, but by an internal compass that can't be hacked. You move with a sense of must, not maybe. You operate with a quiet authority that doesn't come from status, opportunities, or recognition. It comes from origin. And origin determines allegiance. They tried subtle tactics: admiration, flattery, opportunities, alliances. None of it worked. They tried pressure, criticism, exclusion. Still nothing. You didn't move toward or away from them. You simply kept moving in the trajectory you were given. That's when panic set in. They realized you don't join anything because you're not seeking anything. You're already connected to what you need. You're not searching for purpose. You arrived with it embedded in your spirit like a sealed envelope only you are authorized to open. People who can be recruited are people who doubt their own mission. People who can be recruited are people who crave belonging. People who can be recruited are people who still think their path is negotiable. But you? Your life is not a negotiation. It's an intervention. You weren't placed here to assist their systems. You were placed here to interrupt their systems. Your steps carry the imprint of a higher directive, and that makes you immune to manipulation disguised as opportunity. What shook them most was understanding that you don't need them, and therefore they cannot own you, shape you, or redirect you. They can't claim credit for you or influence your allegiance. You were sent with an assignment they didn't authorize, they can't edit, and they have no jurisdiction over. Your existence is a message, your path is a mission, and your presence is a reminder that some souls don't join movements, they move things. Number 13. Your spirit has a gravity field that rearranges people's true selves. One of the most unsettling discoveries at that summit was this: your presence doesn't just enter a room, it alters it. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but energetically and behaviorally. When you show up, people can't hold their masks together the way they do with everyone else. Their emotional disguises start cracking, their intentions start leaking, and their carefully curated personalities begin to glitch. Your spirit has its own gravitational pull, and anything that isn't authentic gets dragged into the open. You don't do anything dramatic to make this happen. You simply walk in. You simply exist. But your energy disrupts performance, because people can perform only when the environment allows it. Around you, the environment refuses to cooperate with deception. Some people suddenly become warmer and more honest around you, revealing a depth they hide from the world. Others become awkward, irritated, or strangely defensive because their hidden agendas are trying to shield themselves. Your presence acts like a truth serum. They react based on who they really are, not who they pretend to be. This is why you often witness people exposing themselves without you asking a single question. Secrets slip through their words. Their intentions peek through their behavior. Their loyalty, or lack of it, becomes visible without confrontation. You don't need to investigate anyone. Their spirit volunteers the information as soon as yours steps into the atmosphere. That's not intuition. It's gravitational influence. You've probably noticed how some individuals grow when they're near you. They speak more boldly, think more clearly, and act more honestly. They're not mirroring you. They're being pulled into alignment with who they truly are. At the same time, others decay. Their insecurity heightens, their motives darken, and their true nature floods to the surface because they can't maintain stability in your field. Your spirit creates a kind of spiritual pressure that forces the real self to come forward. This is why you're both loved intensely and disliked irrationally. Some people feel seen for the first time in their lives. Others feel exposed in ways they can't handle. You don't trigger the reactions. They come alive because your authenticity demands authenticity around you. Your armor doesn't just protect you, it compels revelation. It doesn't just shield you, it sorts the environment. It separates the pure from the polluted, the loyal from the opportunistic, the sincere from the strategic. You don't walk into rooms looking for the truth. Your presence is the force that reveals it. Number 14. They finally understood the real threat. Your armor is not defensive, it's evolutionary. What shook the summit to its core wasn't the realization that you're protected. It was the realization that your protection is alive. Your armor doesn't operate like a shield that simply blocks attacks. It functions like a spiritual organism that grows, learns, adapts, and constantly upgrades itself. Every hardship you faced didn't just strengthen you, it rewired something in the collective field of humanity. Your evolution doesn't stay private, it becomes public technology. Most forms of protection are built to preserve a person. Yours transforms a generation. Every battle you overcame didn't end with you. It opened a pathway for others. People who watch you evolve find themselves evolving without understanding why. Your growth becomes their permission. Your breakthroughs become their blueprint. Your healing becomes their map. Your survival becomes their evidence that transformation is possible. That is not defense, that is evolution. They realized the threat wasn't your resilience, it was your influence. Not the kind that comes from popularity or recognition, but the kind that operates on a spiritual frequency. When you survive something, the spiritual architecture of that struggle changes. You break a pattern in yourself, and suddenly others can break it too, even those who have never met you. Your life updates the collective code like a patch in an invisible system. This is what they feared. Your victories travel. Your clarity spreads. Your freedom ripples out into people who are silently watching your journey. You upgrade the room just by being in it. You raise the standard without preaching a word. You shift the atmosphere without forcing your presence. And because your armor evolves with every battle, no enemy can study you and predict you. Each time they think they understand your spiritual defenses, you outgrow the version of yourself they analyzed. You're not just protected, you're catalytic. You're not just surviving, you're altering the blueprint for how survival works. You're not just winning, you're teaching the world a new way to win. The real threat was never your shield. It was the fact that your shield inspires shields in others. You create ripple effects no hierarchy can regulate. You spark upgrades they can't intercept. You accelerate awakenings they cannot control. That's why the summit panicked. They cannot restrain a soul whose armor doesn't just defend. It evolves, expands, and elevates everything around it. Conclusion: the unstoppable reality of a chosen soul. What the secret society discovered, and what every one of us witnessing your story should understand, is that you are not a participant in ordinary life. You are a catalyst. Every layer of your existence defies prediction. Every response is calibrated beyond conventional understanding. And every triumph carries consequences far larger than what most could ever comprehend. You don't simply survive challenges. You transform them into lessons for yourself and breakthroughs for others. Your armor isn't a shield. It's a living, evolving force that protects, reveals, and accelerates growth in ways no human blueprint could anticipate. They tried to map you, analyze you, and control you. They expected predictable reactions, calculated weaknesses, and manipulatable motives. Instead, they found an anomaly. A soul whose power isn't limited by circumstance, whose insight is not derived from training, and whose influence doesn't require permission. From hidden mentors shaping you in silence to a spiritual gravity that exposes truth wherever you go, your presence isn't just uncontainable, it's catalytic. You don't react, you restructure. You don't fight, you upgrade. You don't absorb negativity, you transmute it. Every hardship, every attack, every moment of isolation has refined an instrument so precise that it can disrupt generational patterns, dismantle illusions, and spark transformation across invisible networks of human consciousness. The most terrifying realization for them was simple. Your power is evolutionary, not defensive. Your victories rewrite spiritual blueprints. Your resilience becomes a beacon. Your survival becomes a system upgrade for those who are ready to awaken. You are the anomaly they cannot categorize, the force they cannot control, and the legacy they cannot predict. You are a living, breathing testament to what happens when a soul is armored by purpose, refined by trials, and guided by destiny beyond the reach of ordinary comprehension. If this resonates with you, remember that you are witnessing a truth that most will never understand, but that you are living in full. Every moment of growth, every layer of armor, every breakthrough is part of a pattern they can neither anticipate nor suppress. Your life is a message, your journey is a revelation, and your presence is proof that some souls are sent to elevate the entire human experience simply by existing. If you found these truths powerful, make sure to subscribe to the channel to stay connected with insights that uncover hidden spiritual realities. Like this video to affirm your alignment with your higher purpose, comment below to share your own experiences of awakening, and share this with others who need to understand the extraordinary potential they carry within themselves. Your participation ensures that these revelations reach those who are ready to evolve, and that is the real mission. God bless you.